And for more on this developing story, we're now joined by Guy Saint-Jacques, a former Canadian ambassador to China. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Glover.
Yes, so I know that you knew Michael Kovrig personally as his former boss. What is your reaction to all of this news today?
Well, the news are pretty amazing. In fact, I was not hopeful that they would come back that quickly. Yesterday, when I heard that Mrs. Meng would be returning to China, my best guess was that I was hoping that they would be back by the end of October. So to see them coming right away, I think we have to be very grateful to President Biden, who certainly has put a lot of pressure on President Xi Jinping to ensure that the two Michaels would be released at about the same time as Mrs. Meng. I'm also very grateful for the work of Ambassador Barton and his team in Beijing to organize all the logistics to ensure the successful return of the two Michaels to Canada.
The speed that you mentioned is something that a lot of us have been remarking on today, but I want to dig into that a little bit more about how this all transpired, because of course this has been going on for years and then a very dramatic and quick sequence of events. What would have been going on behind the scenes to allow for this?
Well, as you know, there were lots of discussions that were going on between Ottawa and Washington. We know that Ambassador Barton went to Washington in April to try to advance this file. And I think that both Beijing and Washington had come to the conclusion that they had to find a way to resolve this irritant. They have way too many, and they have to find ways to try to restore the relationship. And I suspect that there were, once there was the broad outline of an outcome, that probably there was some pressure from Beijing on Mrs. Meng to accept what was proposed and to come to this end. But again, I was thinking that there would be further discussion, that the Chinese would have some ask from us, as they had back in 2016 when we negotiated the return of Kevin Garrett. But again, what we saw, in fact, was clear hostage diplomacy. But again, thanks to the U.S., this has been satisfactorily resolved.
Very interesting indeed. And China has said throughout that the detention of the two Michaels was unrelated to Meng's detention in Canada. But what does the speed of the Michaels' release after Meng's release say to you about this argument from China?
Well, I think this argument is completely demolished. And China realized, I think, that its image has been badly tarnished by this. They were not expecting Canada to go to allies to ask them to make démarches on China to seek the release of the two Michaels. Then they were probably quite surprised when the declaration against hostage-taking was adopted last February. And I would say that we know a lot better now, after 3 years, about the dark side of China with what's going on in Xinjiang, what they are doing in Hong Kong, in the South China Sea, pressure that they are putting on Taiwan, how badly they managed the COVID-19 outset. And I think for all those reasons, they probably came to the conclusion that it was better to come to an end. But I would guess that they will think twice in the future before taking someone else hostage.
You just mentioned hostage diplomacy. So what does this all tell us about China and the use of hostage diplomacy to achieve what it wants?
Well, it's something that they have used frequently in the last few years. Of course, you may have seen report also from Australia. Australia has a couple of businessmen who are also detained. I remember that in 2012, there were Japanese citizens that were detained after the Japanese had arrested the captain of a Chinese fishing boat. And in the past, this has been a very successful. In fact, Canada itself, as I mentioned earlier, we went through this when Kevin and Julia Garrett were arrested in August 2014. In that case, it took just over 2 years to seek the release of Kevin Garrett. But again, thanks to the initiative taken by Ottawa to mobilize public opinion in like-minded countries, I think that I hope that China will think twice about using that kind of tactic in the future.
So many Canadians have watched this storyline play out very closely. What would you tell any Canadian who is planning to go to China? How worried should they be about being part of any sort of hostage diplomacy like you just laid out for themselves?
Yeah, well, I have many discussions with business people, and obviously they are very concerned about going to China, and I would be too. This being said, we have to distinguish between Chinese people and the Communist Party of China and the Chinese regime. It's a great country, great people, but I think for a business person, if you go there, you have to stick to the rules and hope for the best. But there's always a risk, because if you think about Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig, they were doing their job in a very open fashion. But here they were arrested. So I think there are some risks. I think also the message for Canada is that we have to try to diversify our trade. This being said, China will always need our agri-food products. And you may be interested to know that, in fact, this year, after 6 months, our exports are up 23%. So the demand will always be there. But maybe for the time being, if you can limit your trips to China, it will need some time to build back trust, and for that, China will have to send the right signals.
I want to dig in more to that relationship between China and Canada. And last night in Vancouver, Meng thanked the court and the Canadian government for upholding the rule of law. This, of course, has been Canada's position as it's tried to navigate between these two superpowers, the U.S. and China. So what do you make of Meng saying that publicly last night?
Well, I was a bit surprised. I thought that she spoke very eloquently, but I was surprised that she made the reference to rule of law, because, in fact, it goes against what the Chinese ambassador, Cong Peihu, had said, and what the spokesperson at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs had said, that, we were just puppets of the Americans. And so I think that she recognized that her treatment was far different from that of the two Michaels. She could afford a large and good team of lawyers. She was very well treated, and I think that was her way to recognize this.
And of course, this whole scenario has completely soured the relationship between Canada and China. What could this signal for the future of those relations?
Well, I think that trust is gone, and things cannot go back to where they were before the arrest of Mrs. Meng. I would hope that the federal government will announce that they will completely reassess the engagement strategy with China. I think it has to start from the defense and protection of our values, and we have to be a lot more strategic. Yes, we have to deal with China, because it's a very important country, especially if we want to tackle issues like climate change and pandemics. But this being said, we have to think about our interests. We have to protect our national security, and we have to work with allies to develop common strategies. We need to be tough, because this is the only language that China understands.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Guy, for joining us on such an important day for these families and for this country.
Thank you very much.
And that is Guy St. Jacques, former Canadian ambassador to China. You're watching CBC News Network.